Okay, today we're going to be talking about the universal design um, in classrooms. So in the textbook, I found this quote: universal design for learning is a learning approach that designs curricular materials and activities that have the flexibility to match learners' strengths and needs so that students can reach their learning goals. It considers different abilities of the learner. So for example, their ability to see, hear, move, read, write, how they comprehend English, their organization, their engagement, and how they remember things. Um, so I kind of did some digging in our textbook. And by the way, you can find that quote on page 32, but I did some digging in our textbook, and the term universal design originally comes from architectural studies in North Carolina. An architect by the name of Ron Mace created the term to advocate for the philosophy that universal design seeks to encourage products that are more usable by everyone. It is a design built for the environment and consumer products for a very broad definition of user. This can also be found in page 32. Now, the universal design for learning benefits students the most. It gives them equal opportunity to succeed by focusing on their strengths and weaknesses. It offers flexibility that allows students to access materials, and it looks for different ways to keep them motivated. So the three principles of UDL include engagement, action, and expression, and representation. And I included some questions that teachers will often ask themselves in order to benefit their students the most. So for example, with the engagement category, teachers can ask themselves, how do I engage my students in class? What ways do I give my students a choice? And a great example of this would be, what options do you give a student as far as a project is concerned to help them benefit the most? So for example, some students are different types of learners. You'll have tactile, visual, auditory. So some students might want to make a poster board while others might want to make a video or Google Slides or some kind of presentation. And then some other students may like to do a speech. So teachers may often find themselves asking whether or not they're giving their students a choice really as far as certain projects and certain types of content are concerned. Teachers will also often ask themselves, how do I incorporate my students' needs and wants into their education? And a great way to do this is pretty much by asking students about their strengths, what their interests are, and what their needs are, what they're struggling in, and then incorporating this information in the lesson plans to promote the engagement of that student. Now, the next category was representation. Teachers will often find themselves asking, what options do I provide for my students that need help and support with engaging with different types of learning? So a great way to help students with this would be to provide various options of learning, which could include imagery, audio, videos, text, hands-on learning, just any kind of anything that'll help a student learn a little bit better based on their type of learning. And then that final category, action and expression, teachers could often ask themselves, am I providing access to assistive technologies for students in need of it? So students that struggle to see, like me, or that struggle to hear certain things and need to be a little bit closer to the classroom, and so on. They'll often ask, have I considered other methods for students to demonstrate their knowledge of course information aside from pencil and paperwork? And a great way to do this would be to use various formats. These can include poster boards, organizers, anything digital, something like that. Teachers could also provide students in need access to crucial assistive technologies that could assist them in class. So as you can tell, the UDL's main focus is on engagement and the amount of learning that a student experiences while in the classroom. It works towards the success of each student. So as far as my learning preference goes, and how that helps me concerning my studying techniques and preparing for class goes, first of all, I'd like to go over the three different types of learning. There's visual, auditory, and tactile, or kinesthetic, I believe. Tactile learners do best when they can touch something physically or do a project hands-on. It helps them to learn the concept being taught the best. Tactile learning is also known as multisensory or kinesthetic learning because these types of learners prefer to hear and see to learn. They also tend to learn by trying something out themselves. Auditory learners learn by hearing and listening to content being taught. They remember things that they heard. They store information by the way it sounds. And they often find it easier time understanding spoken instruction than they do written ones. So for example, they learn better hearing a teacher speak in the classroom versus having to read a textbook. Reading out loud and using flashcards are also useful ways to study for them. And then visual learners use images, colors, maps, graphics to learn content. So they often have to see information first to learn it. These types of learners tend to be or have a photographic memory. They can typically reference back to things that they'd seen in the past to help them with current events. In the classroom, these types of learners benefit from seeing the content being drawn out. Now, I personally am a visual and tactile learner. As a result, I'm better when I can feel something or see items that relate to the content that I'm being taught. I mostly prefer hands-on learning because I can form a visual image in my brain of what I've done with my hands, which kind of makes the visual and tactile learning go hand in hand. So for example, back in middle school, we did a hands-on project with math, algebra specifically, where we had to go around, solve some problems, put some stickers up. It was kind of like a scavenger hunt. I did good working with my hands to figure things out. Plus the fact that I was moving around the room, I got good glimpses visually that helped me out later on whenever we had an exam over that content. I always seem to do my best when I can either recall visual images in my brain or reference back to hands-on projects that I had done in the past. And I perform the same way in real life. So recently I built a roof over my back porch, and prior to building the actual roof, I had to draw out a bunch of images with all the measurements where everything was going to be so that I knew what I was doing. And then once those images were drawn out, I had to work hands-on to figure out how I was going to build the thing, which it turned out pretty good. But that's just my way of learning. So concerning my studying technique, as far as school goes, typically what I like to do is I like to do some kind of hands-on something to get a better feel of what I'm doing, what I need to be doing. And then visually, I like to highlight notes, make flashcards. I like to look at pictures. I'm a really big fan of watching videos on content, specifically very interesting videos, just because it's easier for me to remember certain events that go on in those videos. And if this makes sense, the best way that I learn visually is my brain kind of like screenshots certain things that are going on. And then I can kind of reference back to that. And then usually the content comes with it of what I was being taught at the time that I saw that specific image. But that is all for me.